Hello and welcome to the King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martins. It's November 5th at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you haven't been to this podcast before, welcome. Great to have you here. I just want to make a few announcements before we get started. Tom Barnett is joining us for an interview today. I'm super excited. I was lucky to see him in Acapulco last February in person, and I've had this in mind ever since. So we've had a time change here. I know a lot of people have experienced that. I was thinking that the government should create, or our government should create, a department of time change and just make it like, okay, this is a thing. And then they should install a new addition to the DSM and call it time change disorder. So I'm definitely suffering this disorder, and it seems to be cumulative over a lifetime. So it is getting worse, and I think that qualifies me for benefits. What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. And so tomorrow, there might have been some confusion about this interview. I'm praying and hoping that enough people caught on to the time we had to reschedule from last week. So I'm super happy that we could do this now. And I did mess up the time. Looks like we're live on Rumble, by the way, and Facebook and YouTube. If you want to jump in the comments and let me know that you're there, that'd be awesome. Also on Vigilante TV, if that worked out. And then tomorrow, I am hosting Mike Wilkerson, who's also known as Stellium 7, at 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. That is a change from our original scheduled 3 p.m. So you can check all of the links. I will drop them in the chat as we go, but you'll find them in the interviews themselves, either on YouTube or Rumble can't be set up in advance when I'm running another stream. So they're just all these little funny complications. But without further ado, I'm going to bring Tom on. Hello, Tom. Welcome.
Howdy, Beth. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Oh, yeah. Very welcome. Very welcome. Yeah. Between detoxing and time zone changes and rescheduling and all that kind of thing, I got a little thrown off. So apologies to, maybe I didn't, you were probably the only person I didn't confuse.
Yeah, no, I was good. I'm used to it. We're used to it in Australia. It's always chopping and changing times.
Right. Yeah, you guys go through that as well. Right. Okay. So we're I'm super excited to talk today about free will, which is my favorite subject, so much so that I named my association the House of Free Will. And welcome, Ron, so I can see Facebook is working. That's awesome. And yeah, this is a pretty fun subject for me. And I don't think it was the first time I ever heard anything like it, but the question that is free will actually a given? So we're going to explore that at length, what that is. Some people would say we don't have free will at all. And that not only you're positing that it's earned, not just given. And then some people think it doesn't exist, that maybe it's all fate, it's all predetermined or something like that. I don't think you're coming from that place. So we will get deep into it. And I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions in advance and get you to introduce yourself if there's anything that you want to share about what you're up to these days. I know a lot of people in this community already know you, but it never hurts for the person that doesn't know you to have a better sense of who you are.
Sure. So thanks for having me. And for those that don't know, my name's Tom, and previously my profession was a holistic health practitioner. And as I was growing through that journey, I was getting more and more disillusioned with the world and dropped out to take up film and photography. So I decided that I would just live a life behind the lens, not really participate in society or the world, and just help tell other people's stories until 2020. And that's when I made a video for myself called Can You Catch a Virus? Because I couldn't believe people were falling for the COVID thing. And then I tried to avoid the attention that came that for a while, but after a few months of trying to avoid that attention, I eventually had to start making my own content again. And so I've been since teaching people about how essentially, if we boil it down, it's all natural law. Even when I was doing health and holistic health, that's still natural law. And so today it's more about combining the aspects of how this realm is governed so that people can find themselves to a better degree and then live a better life as a result, more on their terms.
That's beautiful. I love that. By the way, before I forget, I wanted to thank you so much for when we did meet in Acapulco, and I went like kaboom down with a, what detox, I guess is the only way really to describe that. And you showed up and brought me some homeopathy, and that meant a lot to me. So in case I didn't express that, I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, you're compassionate. It was so nice to meet you.
Yeah, I know that was a bummer because it happened on like the second day or something, and it was a good time just hanging with the crew there at in Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was super fun. Very bizarre perspective from my place. Wasn't what I planned to be laying out. I made it for the what do they call it? It wasn't the introduction, but the orientation. So I made it for that, and then the next day it was just over. Like, yeah, kind of crazy. I kind of vowed that I'm not going back to Mexico during that trip. Like, there's just so many things that are really hard, and the travel. I'm really glad they moved the location over to Puerto Vallarta because it's so much easier to get to.
I don't know where that is, but yeah, it's I knew that was the last one where we had it, so kind of cool that we got the last one there, I guess.
Yeah, it's special in its own right, but there's I don't know, a lot of things. Just the travel for a Canadian, it's insane. It took me 2 days to get there and 2 days to get back. So yeah, I'm happy for them. So we're gonna, go ahead.
No, I didn't think it was that far. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's stupid. Overnights in poison hotels and have you noticed, by the way, before we get into it, since you do a lot of traveling for your work, that the whole, security and the regulations and everything has just become so exponentially absurd?
Well, in Australia, it's already kind of the worst, so it didn't really seem overly bad to me. The only difference was when we left the States to go to Mexico, you had to take your shoes off to go through the, and I'm like, of course, people can't, like, it made sense. I didn't find it overly obtrusive at all. But obviously I can see that it is getting more that way for sure. I think we all have different experiences though. Like, I've been telling people this on different podcasts, like, we generally have pretty good runs going through airports, and you notice that certain people seem to have more of an issue and more than others. And I think it's the way we're carrying ourselves through the world in general. I think that has a lot to do with it. But yeah, I've heard people swear that they'll never get on a flight again since kind of 2020. And I'm kind of like, why? Like, I don't know why you would stop the idea of something preventing you going to another land to experience something new, because it's like when people say, don't go to the States, it's horrible. And we had a great time in the States. And they say, oh, don't go to certain place. Every place we went to that people said, don't go there, we had an amazing time. Like, people think that because of what they hear on social media or this construct of their mind that has been implanted or that they've created, it really prevents them living a life. So me and Summer, we just don't want it to let that happen. So, even if things get more stringent at airports, we'll still have ways to deal with that.
Right. Yeah. There is so many individual experiences in the world of regulation and law and navigating the public that I've seen that over time, where certain circumstances, other people, like literally during the 2020 mask thing, I was with a friend who didn't want to fight with the store clerk, and she just would mask up and go in. And I said, well, you know what, we'll go in together. I've been getting my needs met without a mask. We'll go in together and maybe we'll just be able to shop freely. Well, we both came in at the same time. Two people headed us off, so we got split up. I had an interaction exchange with one of the people, and they let me stay, and then they made her leave. Right. So we were like right together, but there was exactly what you're saying. She had this paradigm that, oh, I'm going to get caught. They won't let me. And that's exactly what ended up happening to her. So that was fascinating.
Yeah, it's a lot of times, especially if we believe we're doing something wrong, we'll act like we're doing something wrong, and that begets a different result from somebody who has a different knowing, which is all, that's everything that I help to talk about these days, is how and why that occurs and why it's so important to get to know yourself. Because without that, and you're hoping for things like rules or laws or somebody else to save you or some kind of belief system to save you, it really can only go so far. And most often it doesn't really give you a real world result. So part of it is the reason that you would have had that result is just because you know you're not doing anything wrong. You're just standing in who you are, moving into where you know you can go, whereas somebody else is kind of going, oh, I'm a bad girl, or I'm a bad boy, or I'm a whatever. They're kind of like in that childlike state, and then expecting almost a result or hoping for something, but it's not who they are. So they're only really going to get an expression or a representation of who they are, not what they really want, or because they're like that unconscious belief system is going to overrule the that want every day of the week.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like it's not just dogs that smell fear. Everybody somewhere registers fear. So if you have that, then that's part of the mix and part of the influence. Also say that it's you can have you noticed this also, that you can be in a really good place and you're not coming from fear and you know who you are, and you don't feel like you're doing anything wrong, but they still throw the book at you somehow.
Yeah, and that would indicate that that's part of a hero's journey to begin from that point.
Nice. Yeah, that's a beautiful reframe, because when I was going through to an Acapulco, I had to pass our U.S. American border in Winnipeg, right in our airport. We move into the U.S. And I went up and I felt just fine. And there was like no problem. And I went to the guy and I said, I'd like to opt out of the facial recognition cameras, please. Being polite, no pride around it. I just fully expected that I could opt out. And he goes, oh, well, come with me then. Like this. He just, and they threw the book at me. They ended up fingerprinting me on threat of I wasn't going to go anywhere. I mean, I could have backed out of the trip, but that didn't seem like a good option at the time by any means. And they were super abusive and yelling at me and stuff. And it was like, wow, okay. That was a really good start to the trip.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. It was a time when also all the tariffs were happening and they were manufacturing a lot more conflict between the US and Canada. So I wondered if there was a little bit of that in the mix, just the politics of the day. Same thing happened coming through the US to return from Mexico. It was the same thing. I tried to opt out and he's going, oh, just go stand over there then.
Yeah.
Right. All righty.
Yeah.
And I said to him, well, are you forcing me to do this camera? He said, yes. And I said, okay, well, then I'll do it.
Yeah, right. So in a situation like that, it's just knowing how to handle that, like what's breaking down what's actually happening. So no one can force you to do that. You just have to then question how and why and what they're doing. It's which is obviously involved. It takes a little bit of time to practice that. Kind of like a martial art, people say, I got shoved up against the wall and there was nothing I could do, or I just went with it. And it's like, well, there's a lot of things you could do, but first you need to know what to do. You have to train that so that it becomes a natural mechanism that's within you. You're not thinking or having to you're not stunned as that happens to try to think about what to do. Mm-hmm. And then you do the repetitions to make that part of you. So it's very similar to, I call it verbal jiu-jitsu essentially, because when you're dealing with people like that, they have a preset paradigm, and anything outside of that might make them aggressive, or because they don't even know what they're doing half of the time. And the reason they get away with it is because people don't know how to call that out in the moment in a way that will still keep them safe and not aggravate them further or cause, like physical altercations or something like that. So, there's definitely ways, because people think that it's going that way and that's just the way it is. But if they do that to somebody who knows what's going on, they're not going to get very far with doing that, and actually be their undoing. But not enough people really know how to handle those situations yet. So that's one of the reasons why in that realm, those types of people think that they can just push it way further than their actual powers of responsibility allow them to do. So yeah, it does exist for sure, but doesn't have to.
So do you mind if I ask? I hear everything that you're saying. Do you mind if I ask? This was the part that I couldn't respond to. They both, on both the entry and the exit, said, you have no rights here. So is that because I was in the US?
So you mean as a Canadian, you have no rights in the US?
That's right.
So the way it works in Australia, for example, is that, and I've done this in an airport where the staff at the airport say that I can't do something, and they say that it's because it's airport policy. So I just bring up the fact that I just ask, I say, so does the airport write the laws? Because what they're kind of saying without saying it, which is what I call out, is, are you saying that you are higher up than federal laws? So is there a federal law that says that an airport staff can do whatever to a patron because you're in a commercial environment? It's privatized. So it's like run by whatever. It's a private environment. So a company can't tell somebody what to do with their body or whatever. They can have their policies, like you can't come in unless you're dressed well. That's fine. But you also then can't discriminate. So you can't say you're not wearing, the right label or something, or you're black or you're Asian. You can't do that. But if you're not dressed well, that's not discrimination. That's just, look, you just don't meet our standards of entry into this premises. And as a private a company or a private enterprise, you have the right to do that, but you don't have the right to infringe on people's actual rights, which come under federal laws and legislations. So that's where a lot of this gets muddied up, is people think that because they're in a position of a private company, that they are somehow, that's the law, but it's not. In many, many cases, they're actually going against laws. So when you actually bring that to their attention, they can back down real fast, because they realize that not only can they get in trouble for that, that it can be pretty, when I say trouble, it can be pretty bad if you're doing that at that level. So it's just having that as a knowing, so that you're not freaking out and you're picking your battles, because that's the main thing, is learning how to pick battles. And if you pick the wrong battle, it's always going to go bad. And if you put in too much of a reaction or too much force to something that doesn't require that, it's going to go bad because of the equal and opposite reactions. So again, it's just like, it's a learning process like anything. If somebody feels freaked out, they generally overreact and when it's like something physical, when they don't need to. So that will usually cause more harm to them. So there's a lot in it. But when you're in another country, sometimes, like when we were in Mexico, I was never going to pretend that I knew how to handle Mexican police, because I don't even speak the language. So I'm not going to do the same things that I would do in Australia in Mexico, because I got to know who I am. I got to know the new jungle that I'm in and where I'm at in the pecking order, because I don't know the lay of the land. So there would be different. However, in like a Commonwealth English speaking country, I would definitely be standing my ground a lot more and asking those kinds of questions. Is that the case for a Canadian citizen in America? I don't know, but I would highly doubt that you're considered to have no rights because you're in an airport. When you get to a border, this is probably going too deep into it. It'll confuse people. But when you're at a border, it's different.
Just to quickly say, this is the border. In both cases, it was the border, because they've got those installed in airports for those border passings. So you're actually in the same airport. You're going from one country to the next country. What I noticed is that the borders have extraordinary power in a very small jurisdiction. And we got detained at the border coming from the US into Canada, driving as well, being way too casual. And I was arguing about the charge of something. They wanted to charge me duty on something, and they quoted me more money inside than they did outside. So I said, "Oh, what's this?" And he goes, "The same thing. Oh, you can just go sit over there then." And I'm like, "You know what? We need to get home. I'll pay your extortion fee and we'll get out of here." He didn't like that. Turns out I'll never use the word extortion fee again in authority. And they called over the guys with the guns. And as I tried to leave, they surrounded me. And I'm like, am I being detained? And he said, "No, but all of your possessions and vehicle are." Like this. And it's like, "Oh, okay, wow." And I did try some of the, like, not using the words goods, and trying to say that, these are just my personal affects and stuff like that. And it escalated, and they got mad and really upset and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, the expression, if you give an inch, they'll take a mile. That's what happens is when in the initial interaction, when it's kind of made evident who you are in relation to the offer or the claim, that it can just go downhill real fast. I see that all the time in police interaction videos on YouTube, where people think that because they've learnt some kind of common law stuff or whatever, they think that they know how to handle a traffic stop. And immediately when they say the first words to the police officer, I can already tell what the outcome's going to be, because
Right.
it's it's not going to go well. That's for sure.
Yeah, that was a grave error on my part. Yeah. And then they end up finding airsoft guns in the truck. They should not have been there, even though and they acted like they were real. And he's jumping up and down, going, "You could turn this into a real firearm, And you're like, "No, we know you can't." But by that point, like you said, it had already tumbled way downhill.
Yeah, you've got to learn how to handle. Yeah, that's a whole other topic. That would take me that's a whole thing that would take hours to teach people how to handle that sort of stuff and why things go that way and how to prevent it. It's not really a podcast kind of subject. And the dog's just let himself in. I'm gonna have to put him outside 1 second.
Okay, take your time.
You're gonna have to go out, buddy. Yeah, 1 second.
Okay. No worries. Yeah, I couldn't help asking his opinion on those things. Those funny things. It did teach me big time when I got in trouble like that. My son was with me. It taught him. He grew up a lot that night. And so I won't press it. Like Tom said, that's more like a workshop. And I totally understand. And Ron was saying Tom had a huge impact on you. Welcome to at Coke. Seems predetermined with some choice. Yeah, interesting. We'll get into it. Hello, Stacy Sunshine. Nice to see you. Maybe we have choices, but could also be predetermined. So we're going to really get into it now. So just as a way to kind of introduce things, I'm curious, what of your beliefs have changed over the last, say, almost 6 years? That could be in law, health, or, various arenas.
Well, that's a good question. Beliefs.
Or how you see things, how you learn something.
I guess the nature of the realm. I think until about 2019, I thought we're on a ball. A lot of things made more sense after I started to dissolve that kind of illusion and narrative. Things that I used to, it's funny because when I was hearing other people talk about it, like Santos Bonacci and other people, they would still teach their same principles, and a lot of it comes from Vedic scripture and what have you. And they were applying it to like a heliocentric model. But then it didn't really change what they were teaching. It just made things make more sense, and it gave more breadth to it once they dissolved that paradigm and came to another one. So I guess for me, I've always questioned beliefs since I was young. It's why I was a quote unquote troublemaker in school, because I really felt that a lot of beliefs, like all beliefs, were a form of ignorance, because I'm like, but if you believe something, it means you don't know it. So you're trying to bridge a gap between not knowing and wanting to know. So that's what a belief is. And it used to really rub people. It was quite especially coming from a young person to an adult, it was very abrasive towards an adult to hear a younger person say that, because it was kind of threatening to them. And they're like, and so that didn't go well a lot of times. But I've always just for myself tried not to hold on to a belief system, and I could have beliefs, but I'd always hold that there's a possibility that's not true. So what if my strongest belief isn't true? I would always hold that as a possibility as well. So then when something comes to me like you can't catch viruses, or then viruses don't even really exist, or we're maybe not on this NASA ball, it's really easy for me to just go, okay, yeah, I can see a case. Like I don't hold on to something so dearly. It's like a death if my belief of something is threatened, and certainly wouldn't kill somebody over it, like a lot of people have done in the past.
I know exactly. Yeah, I sometimes when I ask questions about beliefs, I have to swap out knowing, because a lot of people have become enlightened about their beliefs being not necessarily based in reality. That they're something that, if I use a polite term, it's like when you don't know, then you make shit up. That's the tendency that I've recognized in myself and people.
Sure, yeah, and it's you kind of like joining imaginary dots with something that's not really there, and it's cool. That's how we function as well. Some of it's a survival mechanism to feel safety and security. Even if it's not really there, you try to create it some way, which is like there's nothing wrong with that. But for yourself on a personal level, I think it's important to realize that most oftentimes we don't actually know, and being super like strong-headed about something will be at the detriment of something internal within you. It'll wear out an organ or a gland system. It'll prevent you accessing something deeper within you that is actually going to provide that for real. So we're swapping fiction for substance and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, everybody's different, but for me, I try not to hold on to beliefs too hard.
Right, exactly. And I think the harder, maybe you just said this, but the harder you hold on to a belief, I think the more obligated the world is to give us circumstances that don't fit, that don't work, or, that the belief can't function in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we could be free that way. Speaking of, so you were one of the first, or the first, certainly the first to me, that came out in 2020 and really questioned that, is there actually a virus out there? And so how did you come to that knowledge? I'm going to be having Christine Massey on pretty soon. I'm like super late to the party on that, but I'm sure you know who she is. How did you come across that knowledge? And did you believe in viruses before then? And that's what set you?
I did. I did, because I studied medicine and I got really sick early. I was like early 20s, which was 2002. So I was trying to find out why I was so ill. It was always leading to like a virus or viruses and so on and so forth. So that was always in my mind, like that was the reality, and I had that as a belief system. So then what happened was, in my studies, because I was studying holistic health, I came across Steiner and Antoine Béchamp. And they were kind of like the contemporaries that were against, like, the antithesis to Louis Pasteur, who was talking about pasteurization and germs and contagions and things like that. So I was very open to it when I came across it, because it sounded like intellectually kind of right. Yeah, it's going to have to wait a minute. He's actually trying to get out now.
Okay. I think he was a cat wanting to go out.
He's not even our dog. He's we're just staying at this property, and he's we love him. He's just like our best friend now. But he actually knows how to open the glass door, so I have to lock it.
Lock it, so, fun. Yeah. That's hilarious. Oh, good. That's better than a cat.
Yeah, but but so I was very open to it, but I was kind of like, I get it, and it makes sense intellectually in that, but I was kind of like, but life is showing me something different. Like, I was here, they were there, this happened. So I'm like, had to really work through, but I was very open. I never just rejected it straight away. I was quite open to it. So I went through my own series of experimentation and things, and wanted to make sure that I was experiencing it in real life. So it was a life experience, not just a knowledge-based thing that's just running around in my head, which is, what a lot of us do. It's just, we learn something, we project it. We learn something, we project it like it's real, but we've never embodied it. We haven't had the life experience of it. We can't, it's not an inner knowing where we can stand on that and just, it is just, that is how it is, as opposed to it's a belief, like it's a knowledge thing that we just keep recycling around different mediums. So then it was, so that by the time I was like sure of that, it was about 2012. So from 2012 to 2020 was like 8 years. I had 8 years of really, not only with myself, but working with people who were clients at the time on why there's no such thing as a contagion, like a physical contagion. There is an energetic contagion, which is another story, but there's no physical germ and there's no physical virus in particular. So that's how I came to that. And then, so when 2020 rolled around, I was already out of holistic health, doing film and photography, trying to just ignore the whole thing. But then I had to speak about it.
Right. What was that like when you saw everybody's going crazy? Was there any trepidation of any kind when you thought about speaking out, or what was the spirit of that?
No, I just, in my egoic self, I just can't, sometimes I just still can't believe people do stuff. Like, I'll be driving along and someone's slowing down to like 40 in an 80 zone. And I'm like, there is no part of me that can comprehend, unless you're having a heart attack, which I can see that you're not, because you're just yapping. There is nothing in me that can comprehend why you're doing that. So when it was 2020, I was like, come on, like, I I was telling some people what I thought of it, and they were arguing with me. I'm like, why are you arguing with me? Like, I don't have time for this. This is stupid. So I made a video that was supposed to go to 20 or 30 friends that were just continually asking me questions, yet also arguing with me. And I'm just like, so I was a little bit flippant in that video. Like, you just saw my attitude then towards, I don't have time for that kind of attitude, which is my own attitude as well. So it's like, there you go. But so I made the video thinking no one would see it except for those 30 people, but it ended up getting shared like 1 million times. So I had to then deal with the next day going out in the street, and people were like, oh, that's the guy from the video. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, everybody in town saw it. And then I realized everybody, well, not everybody, but heaps of people throughout the world saw it. And so that was a big paradigm shift for me in needing to not only handle being recognized, but to walk the walk, because I said some very bold things in that video. Like, and imagine being wrong about that. Like, that could cost people their lives, you know. Like, it's one thing to make clickbait, rage bait videos on the internet just to make some wild claim. But the thing is, if you do that and that claim is wrong and that claim kills people, that could be like really bad news. But I knew it wouldn't. But it's just like there's meeting that potential energetic that can come from that. Like, it's very strong. So that was a part of my hero's journey to be able to move through that and step into that and take that up as a role and standing on the message that I was delivering, which was a big thing for me.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think a lot of us have that. I remember seeing that exact video, if I'm not mistaken. And I was on my little teeter-totter wondering how to navigate. And I don't remember it really specifically, but I remember this rising up. And it's like, you know what? If there's ever a time to speak, it is now. If I'm ever going to regret not speaking up, it would be now. And was there a price to pay for that, by the way?
No. I mean, it wasn't easy, but yes, but
in terms of backlash and relationships and
heaps, yeah. But I didn't see it as a price. I mean, it was not easy, but I didn't see it as a price because it was part of a shedding of many things. And so it was always worth it. It was always a sacrifice to gain something that I had to earn, which was then worthwhile. So yeah, I wouldn't have done it. I mean, I would have done it a little more sophisticated, but I wouldn't have changed what I did.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Great courage. Helped a lot of us. And so I'm curious, just before we dive in with free will, is there anything in what I would term to be the alternative law movement that your knowing has changed about in the last 6 years since 2020?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good one. I guess when I first started out in that, which was like 2010 or something like that, it was more about like resisting and fighting something. Like, here is this system, it's wrong, and this is what's right. And so they don't go together, so they have to battle each other. And that really didn't get very far. And I saw so many people, really, when I say fail, I mean they got bad things happened to them. Let's just say that. And then I saw a lot of people taking people for a ride and charging a lot of money for things. People lost houses, people went to jail, people lost their life savings, people's lives fell apart from a lot of it. And the reason is because I believe that people were coming at it from a pure place of projecting onto something that they really didn't understand. So the reason that I share the way I share it is because I'm coming from a place of knowing who you are first and foremost, which then leads to judgment, discernment, picking battles, knowing who you are, standing, and then that's how you enter into the world. And that gives a much, much different and much more favorable result than like, let's do this process, or you only have to say these words to a police person at a checkpoint or something like that, which almost invariably does nothing except cause harm, because people don't know who they are. So they're not going through that kind of checklist of like, why is this interaction happening? What is that really? Who am I really? And then what's the standing relative to one another? And then how do you pick battles, and et cetera, and how do you handle that? How do you stand in and stay in your power? And what is that power? Because it's not from a law. It's not from a piece of paper. It's not from like some this government thing, but that government thing. And it's kind of like, it doesn't really work that way in my experience. So from when I started to what I do now, it's just completely at odds to how I started out, because that's how I learned, obviously. As a natural kind of rebellious person, or a free thinker, or whatever you want to call it, I was always questioning things like society and rules and laws, like why and how and what. And so it's obviously, you build up a bit of anger and resentment and tension. And then that kind of, once you realize there's something you could say, or there's a piece of paper that's different from what that, you're just like, whoa, it's like this outpouring of, I knew there was a way, I knew there was hope, or whatever. So then it's a little bit too much of that fighting energy that goes into it, or I'm better than you, or you can't do this to me, or whatever. Not everybody's like that, but that's a very common energetic that goes along with it, which is why it doesn't really work out well. And even the people that have been in it for decades and still doing the same thing, even if they get sporadic results that they can kind of share with people and say, therefore this works, they're generally quite withered and gnarled and very cynical about the world. And I'm like, even if you're right, even if what you're doing is correct, I don't want to be like that in 10 years' time. That does not look like a fun life. Like that normie over there, in my opinion, has a better life than that guy who's this anarchist guy who knows all of these legislative things, who's the head Satanist of whatever. And I'm like, I don't care. Like you look bad. You look better. I would rather be a normie than like that. Obviously, there's a middle ground, which is what I'm trying to help people figure out.
Sorry, I was muted. I did get a message that there was an echo on your side, and I'm curious if you guys can give me some feedback on the chat. I assume you're not hearing the echo, Tom?
Wait, hello? I can't hear an echo.
Right. So, yeah, the chat, no, I can't hear any echo. It sounds clean to me, but halfway through when you were talking, I muted just in case that was the case. But yeah, so if anyone else wants to let us know if they're hearing echoes, then we'll troubleshoot that. So so let's talk about free will. How would you define that?
So I can't remember what it was that you saw that you reached out to me to want to talk about it. Do you remember what it was that I'd...
Yeah, I rewatched it, and I should have rewatched it like again today just to get it really specifically into my mind. Yeah, I'm like a trapdoor on the concept of free will. What were you talking about? And like basically just the punchline that it's not a given. It's not something that, so sorry, I can't give you more context. I should have.
Oh, that's right. I was just wondering if it just to give context to how you saw it. But I've for a long time really not thought that we've had free will because of the amount of times that I thought that I exercised it, but then grew through something because I'd learned something new, I'd earned something different, I'd sacrificed to actually have more of it. And then I go, okay, well, what I had then wasn't really free will. You could argue and say it's relative free will, and that would be correct. So for example, like if I said, I'm like, look, Beth, I really like you, so I'm going to give you your choice of pens, and here's 3. There's yellow, green, and purple. And you're like, good, I'm going to use my free will and take purple. But behind my back, there's also red, indigo. Why haven't I given you those? So you kind of like, oftentimes it's an illusion. Like in the context of what I'm offering, you could say you have free will to even not take one or whatever. But then there's so many other forces at play that are there to cause illusions and trick and what have you, that I don't believe it's actual free will that we have until we've gone through enough, like learning experiences. We've earned the ability to actually discern and see through illusions. And that's where we can have a lot more free will, because a lot of people don't even really know what they're doing with their life. So how can they really have free will in that context? So the context is that based on what people know, yeah, sure, they can have free will based in the context of what they know and what they have in front of them. But the fact that there's so much more to not just life, but their life and them that they haven't uncovered yet, that's why I say it's like it's earned. Because if it was given, if you look at people's lives and what they're choosing, it doesn't really represent. It's kind of like you can predict it down to a T, which indicates that it's programmed more than it's chosen. So then are choices programmed? And you can get into that kind of conversation as well. And in some cases, I believe that they are. Once somebody's gone through enough. So for example, a lot of what we do, it's just we're projecting from our shadow traits. We're projecting from programs. We're projecting from our parents that are running through us. Like, how are we free if we're shackled by the programs from even just our parents? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So that's kind of the premise of it. We can talk about like any kind of or debate on any kind of facet of that. That's just kind of like the overall premise of it. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, but that would be the cliff notes.
Nice. I found the video and it's only 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Should I put it on and then you could get a little bit more context?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll do that right now. And looks like the echo is gone. That's excellent. It's like hearing that. And so I will start this up.
And people get excited about their own demise. It's a beautiful thing, I think, when people wake up, because there's this mix of excitement and trepidation. I think also a fairly predetermined set of parameters in how they react to waking up. So it's trepidous because you wonder, how deep does it go? Is it all a program? Is it all controlled? Is it all about taking from us? Do we have any say in this world? Do we have any rights? Is anything healthy anymore? Are the skies healthy? Is the soil healthy? Is anything for us and not to take from us? Mixed with a bit of excitement because it's all new. So you have access to new information, access to new possibilities. And it actually can, when those two are not integrated and balanced out, you can find that the trepidation and the excitement actually marry together, and people get excited about their own demise. So there's a Tool song called Vicarious. Eye on the TV because tragedy thrills me, whatever flavor it happens to be. People are enthralled by tragedy and death and destruction because it's equally like appalling and enthralling. And when people do not separate and integrate those parts of their shadow persona, because we all have the capacity for evil, we all have the capacity for destruction and death and all the other things. And we also, as hopefully good souls, we have the capacity for great empathy and love and protection and morals. And what happens is those can get muddied up, as I've been saying. So we get excitedly trepidous about the world that surrounds us, which means that we are excitedly trepidous about our internal world, which means it's probably not the most happy place to be, nor is it safe, nor is it necessarily moral, and nor is it going to be fruitful. It's going to be fruitful for the program that is there that will play out over time to a very, very specific set of outcomes that have already been predetermined. Hence why I say, and a lot of other people also say, that we do not actually have free will. We have to earn the free will. We have to be willing to go within and to break down a lot of these programs and constructs before we can even glimpse free will, let alone use it. So accessing and using effectively are, again, two very different things.
Hey, babe.
Am I muted?
Sorry, those autoplays are very annoying. I guess you didn't want to watch Friends after that.
No.
Hello, Topher Gardner. Nice to see you. In common sense, Austin, Australia says you don't have free will if your land has a reserve bank, right? So these are some of the nuances around free will. And so is there anything more that you'd like to say, having seen the context first?
I guess that's kind of how I gave it before you played that, because for me, what I've learned over time is that it does have a lot to do with constructs and programs. And like I said, a lot of people are living, and a lot of us, because we still are, like, I'm not through all of my programs yet. I know that. That's why I don't hold on to belief systems to any degree of veracity, because I'm like, the amount that I've been through already, surely, some of what I have now is still of the same kind of energetic. So I think that that's what binds us, and we do have the free will to overcome that. But the thing is, you have to earn that. Like, are you willing to do that? What are you willing to sacrifice to do that? What are you willing to do that? What hero's journey are you willing to go on in order to break through throughout that cycle, come out the other side with more free will than what you started with? But I do believe it has to be earned. I just can't look around at society and believe that people are exercising free will. and that it's innately given to them. I think innately it's there as a potential for sure, just like we innately have the potential, if you're not a muggle, for magic of sorts. And but you have to access that. And what are you going to do to access that? You know, it's not just like, oh, it's just there. You know, like it is, but it isn't. Like it's there, but you have to earn it. You have to access it. How do you access that? It's not just given. And that's the nature of the realm, I believe. It's like, I just don't think that we're given things innately. And when I hear, not to put anyone down at all, but when people get super like, they get, so when people can't even entertain the idea that it's opposite, like we're talking before with belief systems, the reason that I could let go of them so easily was because I always held the possibility that it wasn't true, whatever I believed in, like the earth or whatever, or viruses. So when people just argue straight away, they're like, no, it's this, and we're definitely given free will. This is, but they're not giving any evidence for it. I'm like, well, why do you need that? And to me, what it means is that they're kind of in that childlike state still, because if they don't have it, how are they going to feel like they have any kind of say in this world whatsoever? And that's so scary and frightening for them that they lock down harder on, no, I definitely have free will. We're all given it. We don't have to earn it. It's kind of like, you know, where people don't want to get off, you know, they want a universal basic income because they don't want to earn it. They just want to have it because, no, I should have it. I'm entitled to it. And I don't want to have to like dig deep and find a value that clearly isn't presenting itself to the world right now because I'm in the position that I'm in. And I just want to believe that it's there already without me having to dig there and find it because I don't know where to find it. So it's too scary. So they just go, no, we definitely deserve universal basic income. That's my value. And I see the same similarity with free will when people just lock down and they're like, no, we definitely have free will. I don't have to dig in there and find it. So that's why I say that it's most of what people are doing is it's an expression of a program or a construct that's playing out. And that's why it's so predictable. And that's why it's in such a limited amount of parameters, behavioral characteristics, actions, reactions, thoughts, feelings, even the creative pursuits. It's almost like down to a T. You can predict that sort of stuff. And then that would also be another indicator. Anyway, that's just how I see it. I'm saying everybody has to believe it, but that's just the topic of conversation.
Mm-hmm. No, I like seeing through other people's eyes. I'm like you, that I would rather go into a conversation. I only put the question mark to make it a little bit more compelling, rather than, you know, just a claim that this is an open inquiry. But I like where you're coming from because you know, you look at certain people or maybe at yourself at times of your life. Maybe it's not as much the case for me right now, but then something can happen and I'll go back there and I will act as if I don't have free will. I'll act as if I have to this or I have to that. And so therefore, it's like that free will doesn't exist because it's not being expressed, even if it's there in potential.
Yeah, for sure. It's there in potential for sure. I think one of the Taoist quotes that ties in really nicely is the doing nothing and leaving nothing undone. Because the guy that can actually do nothing and leave nothing undone is free. The minute you have intent towards something or a strong pull towards something, it's not you. That's coming from somewhere else. So whatever actions occur from that projection is not of free will. You can kind of try to find free will in that in ways, but it's kind of like a flavor of it. It's not the real thing. The guy that can actually do nothing and leave nothing undone then has access to free will. But not many people can do that. Naturally, people generally have to earn that through a lot of letting go and a lot of inner work.
Exactly. I've been diving in with the Bhagavad Gita. I went to India 8 times and I used to spend a lot of time in there, and I wrote a bunch of music to the verses. I learned enough Sanskrit to be able to pronounce them properly, but I had kind of left it behind. It was more in my past, just on recordings and stuff like that. And then, so that's one of the primary tenets, if you call it tenets in the Gita, is this, what I have learned to call non-doership, where you feel like you're not doing anything, but it's exactly that you leave nothing undone. Is that the same idea that you're talking about?
Definitely. Yeah. It's that ability to humble yourself and quiet yourself enough that life works through you. So you're kind of getting you're tapping into the flow of the nature of things as opposed to the thinking mind that's trying to like force things. There's another quote that says the world is not governed through interference. So it's like the more we're fixated on interfering and doing and fighting and changing, the less we're actually doing. The more actually continuing to build the construct that is there that we're trying to oppose or fight or bring down. So it's a very similar concept.
Right. Beautiful. And how would you define a program? You did rattle off like, some thoughts and feelings and that kind of thing, but is there any way that you define that? This is my whole subject, so I'm always looking at this.
Yeah, I would just define it as something that's not inherently you. So there's imagine you've got like a device, and the device is just a blank slate. It has the ability to do many things. It has this amount of like RAM and gigabytes of whatever that it can do potentially, but until it's got a program put into it, it doesn't really know what to do with information or how to output. So a program is something that's installed into us, and how it's installed is either through an event, an experience, a thought form. If our boundaries and energetics are low, we can also be open to being permeated with programs, but we're also come in with a predetermined set, which is ancestral. So that's a blueprint as well. So it's not always bad. Programs aren't a bad thing. Some programs are obviously very favorable and good. They're part of what makes us and what drives us. However, they also always have a shadow component that can be the detriment to us. Then the other ones are once we enter into the world, then we are in this realm of just constant information around us, and that does program us through various means. And that's why programming tools such as media, music, television, storytelling, and then even behaviors like how you inflect something to somebody in real life. That's where military and police are trained to do that, is to program into people subservience in the way that speech patterns are. So everything is designed to be programmable, a program, and we are a programmable entity. But when we start to get to know ourselves, we start to be, we're not as permeable to that from outside forces. And we can clear out some of the stuff that's inside that's not really serving us and get down to who we really are at our soul essence, which is then external to the programs. And that's the journey for a lot of people that go on the quote unquote spiritual path, is really just to do that.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I like that. Do you think this is always a question for me? I act as if this is true. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. And I really did borrow this from the alternative law movement about, when it comes to contracts and the way that we tacitly agree to them. So we're not outright asked, do you want to fry your brain on a smart meter every day? If they asked it that way, you might as different, but just by saying, okay, yes, I accept all of these arrangements that you've made, that you are in fact agreeing to that. And when it comes to programming, like you said, it can come externally where authorities actually want to actively program us. Now, here there's a little fine point that I suspect there is an internal tacit agreement to programming, but that maybe at times of our life, we're utterly resourceless to do anything about it. Like infants who are at the mercy, who could die in a day or two without proper care. And, so we are at the mercy at times of the programming around us, like me being caught in these little border things and them being so mad and overpowering me. It was a kind of programming because I, accepted that, agreed to that. So would you say that people agree to their own programming at some level?
Oh yeah, I would definitely. I was coming up with different points as you were speaking, but overall, yeah, absolutely. I do agree with that. It ties in perfectly with the free will thing, because again, it's like, what are you accessing at the time and why or why not? So it's a very similar topic. So when you're talking about have we already agreed to that? Yeah, absolutely. And it's why one of the reasons I believe that we're here is to transcend that. Some people don't take that up as a path to take, and that's fine. They have the ability to do that, and other people do. I think that we are by nature programmable, and we do agree. When you're talking about tacit agreements though and contracts, the contract is voided the moment you actually know what it is and what's going on. There's a quote that says that like with regards to the control of this realm, it's only controlled to the degree that you give it that your attention allows. Once you start to harness that for yourself and it goes within, then the control structures just don't have the power that they did. They rely on that attention. And likewise, there are many tacit agreements that go along in society. The difference between a contract and an agreement is the consideration. So then people get confused. They're like, but what's the consideration? I didn't pay anything, but we pay with a lot of different things. We pay with our internal currencies. We pay with many different parts of us that are worth far more than $1. So we are forming contracts energetically all the time. So when it's tacit, it's because we have formed like you said, they don't say, hey, can I fry your brain with a Wi-Fi router or a smart meter? Because people would be like, what are you talking about? Some people would still go, yeah, sure, as long as I can get Netflix, no problem. Some people would do that. Other people would find that a bit strange. But what's happening is because you would think that the very essence of an agreement is being voided. So we don't have the agreement or the contract because was there a meeting of the minds? Is there anything that says to you, listen, this is what it's going to do. This is what we intend for it to do. Should you agree, we'll install this in your house. That doesn't happen, does it?
No.
But it does on different levels, because what's happening is that our standing relative to the offer is really, really low. And that's how we end up in these agreements and contracts. But as we start to learn, as we start to grow, as we start to access free will, as we start to undo the programs, now we actually are on a level playing field. And that's when we nullify agreements and contracts. And that's how we can either A, have that stuff not enter into our field, as in it doesn't come in the first place, or if it's there, we can have it removed. And B, on a higher level, it doesn't affect us in the same way because we don't have the agreements of what's entering into our field. So the simplest example I can give, because I gave it so many times, is while we were traveling, because we went through so many different airports, opting out of different scanners and whatever is always an option. One time though, I think it was going from the States to Mexico. Summer said she wanted to opt out of the scanner thing. And the lady who was operating it got a bit stroppy, like with you. Not angry, but just kind of like stressed. She's just like, oh, yeah, I just, you just have to wait over there. We're like, well, for how long? She's like, I don't know, it'll be like half an hour. So it's kind of in that position of, I don't have to, but I'm going to be waiting for half an hour. We didn't have half an hour to wait. And when I showed some of that, because she's very sensitive, she would always get headaches going through machines. I'm like, the machine's not more powerful than you. It's literally like the amount of power in that is less than the amount of electrical potential in your fingernail. So it can't harm you. So if you stand in that standing relative to the offer and you put out, you emanate who you really are, it won't affect you. And since then, she's gone through plenty and never had a headache. She's very sensitive and very tapped in and stuff. So that's why she would get headaches. And now she just that doesn't happen. Not to say that it's good to always do that, but what I'm saying is that relative to the offer, when your standing increases because of digging deeper into who you are and you access that yes is there inherently as a potential, but it's not activated. So you access and activate that by being willing to do that, by letting go of fear, digging deeper into who you really are, and then expressing that into the world. That Wi-Fi router or that smart meter is not going to fry the brain of an individual who is in their power and their standing, whereas it will to somebody else. Why? Because the agreements that they're forming is that is who they are relative to that, because of ignorance, because of so many other factors. But that's why we don't all live in the same world. I don't know if Topher's still on, but one of the things that I learned through him was we all experience well, forget the way he put it, but he said we all experience our own individual sun. So that the sun that I look at isn't the same sun that you would look at, for example, or experience. We experience it differently. And that was very relative to a lot of the things that I was experiencing, but I hadn't heard it put that way. And that helped open my mind up to whole other ways of seeing things as well. So yeah, I mean, agreements and contracts are a big topic, but hopefully that kind of summarizes how and why we can come into these things thinking that we're not really consenting and contracting, but we are, but also how to overcome them.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, there's different levels of, I've worked a lot with the victim archetype in my courses and stuff like that. And there's different levels of that. People will even turn that on you, reverse it, and like, oh, don't be a victim. Meanwhile, you're being victimized. You're being harmed. So if we keep using that example, hello to Summer, by the way, really nice to have met her. That if we use that example of going into that machine, and sensitive or not sensitive, there is some harm that comes. Like if you put tissue under that machine, you will see how it's affected. There's reasons that people do opt out, but just with a simple shift of the idea that she has more power, then she was able to mitigate the harm of that. And so, what's my question about that? Maybe there isn't one. I don't know if you want to say.
Well, the thing is that the extension of that, let's go backwards and then we'll do the extension. The going backwards is that, yes, there is biological harm caused to tissues, but how is the tissue outside of the body? Is it a sample of tissue? Because that's not how tissue functions. The tissue functions as part of the being and the whole and the expression of the soul. So If that's all muted in that, and then you test it on a live bit of tissue in the body, and it's still showing it's because the body's not functioning well. It's because of something else that's in there that is reciprocating with that frequency. It's not always just going to cause that harm. However, when you're talking about innocence, like if you put it on a baby, sure, it can. But part of the reason for that is because the parent is in fear, or the parent is not casting that protection around the child, giving it enough safety, security, and love and power, so the baby's emanating that as well. There's a lot of discussion on that, but there's too much to go into in detail. But as a premise, it would depend on how that tissue is being tested. But if we go forward into it, it's not just not being harmed by the machine. I haven't done it yet, but I do firmly believe that the greater you do that, you can actually shut the machine down. I've had the experience of shutting down devices like computers and phones, and going into places that are being filmed, and then the audio all crackles out while I'm there, and then when I leave it comes good again. Doesn't mean that I'm doing it on purpose or anything, but I just know that our electromagnetic field is vastly stronger than the electromagnetic field of a 2.5 gigahertz Wi-Fi router or a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi router or audio processor. And likewise, these machines, they're not that strong. So is it a potentiality? Absolutely. Do we all have it? I don't know. I think half the population are muggles and probably don't. But for the people who are activating in their soul journey, then I do believe we have that. But again, we have to access it. Likewise, just on that topic, I don't have like this thing where I'm more powerful than everything and I'll just walk. Like, I don't have that, because once you start to have that, that's when harm will come, because there's this big pride before the fall, and it's not operating from that essence of who you are, which is really subtle and really very humble. Once you start getting into, you can't do this to me, and I'm better than you, and I'm more powerful than that thing, and I'll just stand, like, that's when you can't access that sort of stuff, and B, you will draw harm to you because of the challenge, the interference that you're putting into the field. Again, that quote, the world is not governed through interference. So, it's like one of those things where if you're able to access the power, you have to have the humility that goes with it, and knowing how to wield it, when, how and how not, and the fact that it's not just like, like this. I'm hearing an echo now, actually. Can you hear it?
Let me mute and see if...
It was more just like a delay. It's gone now.
Okay, figured itself out. That's good. Okay, very good. And one of the things that I've noticed, this again might not be a question, but one of the nature of programming is that I always get people to discriminate. Is it sentient, full of life, and have volition and free will, or is it an automation?
As a program, do you mean?
The programming itself. Sometimes I'll grasp for words and say the architecture of the programming that makes up the collective thoughts, feelings, experience, beliefs that causes you to say, oh, I'm going to be harmed by this, and therefore becoming harmed. So when it comes to like the actual nature of that energetic architecture that we carry around and can let go of, do you have a sense that it's full of life, or is it inert?
I'm not sure. I don't know about that, because I think it comes from different places, and also why. For example, going through airports, the vast majority of people don't believe that there's anything that will cause them harm.
Exactly.
From the boosters that they just got, to the scanners, to being on the aeroplane, which this is the other thing. Like, I think, honestly, the aeroplane itself that you're on for 10 hours has far more radiation in it than the scanners that you would go through prior to boarding. But yeah, but most people on the plane just, I don't know, they don't really care. They don't care, nor do they really seem bothered by it. But that's because they're also not. So again, I don't know this to be true. I just have a basic model. Let's just say roughly half the population aren't really here for soul individuation and don't really have that potential for anything more than just a very narrow set of parameters. And then of the half that do, like, a lot of them are generally the more sensitive types. And it's the sensitive types that are susceptible to, things like scanners and whatever. Mm-hmm. But that's just because in the sensitivity, it's not a negative thing. It's not like a burden, or it's like, oh, why me? Like, I can't even function in the world because I'm too sensitive. It's just that individual hasn't accessed the inherent power that's there. And again, it has to be earned. It's like, it's not inherent that they have the magic or these abilities, or like the ability to harness that sensitivity into something innately very powerful, but it is there as a potential. But because of the nature of the realm, the way it seems to be programmed is that they have to earn it. If it was just given to them, it wouldn't really mean anything. It wouldn't be of value. Like, isn't free will and the ability to these things are so valuable. They're like up there in like the top tier of parts of being alive. So why would you not have, if it's so valuable, why would you not have to earn something valuable? It just doesn't make sense that it's just like just freely given, because then why people don't seem to value that. I guess you could flip that and go, it is freely given, and it's such a valuable thing that only people who are attuned to knowing what value is will use it. And the people, it's like, I could give you one of my guitars. It's like so good. But if you're not a guitarist, you'd be like, I don't know, I'll just hawk it at the pawn shop for like $100. And it's like, do you know where that wood came from? Do you know who made that? Do you know how the fretwork, you just don't know. Like, if you don't know, you don't value it. So, but the guitar is still a guitar. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ways you can look at it, but I guess it's a really important topic because so many people are genuinely suffering. They feel pain, they feel disillusionment, they feel sensitivity to certain things. So when we're talking about these topics, I do want people to know that I'm not acknowledging the fact that people do experience harm and pain and so on and so forth with what they experience in the world. But what I am saying is that that's just an offer, because that's not who you really are. So that's just in this middle ground between having woken up at some point or through whatever means, and the being that you can be in the world, just kind of in a middle ground. And sometimes that hurts, and sometimes that feels like you're a victim, and so on and so forth. But as long as you're willing to grow through that, you don't have to stay in that state. And the same things that affect you now that you think is the enemy and it's all unfair and it's all unjust won't be that once you've transcended that, if you're willing to continue along that path. But it's not to diminish what somebody is experiencing now, because it's very real and it's very true.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. That's because that's at the end of the day, say you are actually being victimized. And I have so much to say on sensitive types, because I happen to be the canary in the coal mine myself. Many people could take a few flights and stay in a poisoned hotel and still be upright on the other side. But that's not me. I'm in a different place. So I have a lot of empathy. I'm not saying you don't have empathy. You just expressed that people do suffer at different levels, and that in my case, I really understand it now that it's accumulated toxicity over a lifetime that has come to a head. And I'm at a very narrow margin of, if I get, bomb me with fragrance in a hotel room for the night and I get sick, like that's so, and other people will just have zero effect with that. I'm on soapbox all the time talking about fragrance, and it's very, very hard to convey to people that they're being harmed because they don't feel it. And it's ubiquitous at every turn, the laundry and the body products and the shampoo and the, you name it, air fresheners. And so yeah, people don't really get it, even when they're like, okay, I won't use fragrance. And they still do, because it's just, they're not noticing it. So anyway, total side topic there.
No, it's a good side topic. It's an interesting one though, because a lot of those people are just kind of cogs in the wheel. They will not be affected by it. And it's part of the sensitive soul's journey, is that they not having to be validated by other people, because so many people experience this in the last 5 years too, like knowing what's really going on, or knowing that you shouldn't be wearing a mask. Not only don't have to, but like for your personal health, you shouldn't be wearing a mask, for example. And being surrounded by this just throng, like 100 deep of people looking at you like, what are you doing? You're an idiot. You're doing it wrong. You're this. Like that's a hard thing for a sensitive soul in particular to deal with, until that sensitive soul realizes their actual power. Then they can stand in front of 1,000 deep and just emanate, like it doesn't have to affect them. So part of the journey is not having to be validated by other people. The fact that other people don't get sick, the comparison and validation thing is a big trap. Have to move beyond that. The other thing is that it's not necessarily not affecting them. It's just that their tolerances are inherently a little bit higher via their constitution. And what happens is nobody experiences symptoms until they're in at least stage 2 or stage 3 of a disease cycle. So people might have a baseline and they're accumulating heaps of this crap in their system. It's definitely affecting the function of their liver, their kidneys, their spleen, their pancreas, their lungs, everything. But what's happening is, but they're not actually realizing that it's happening, because they don't have headaches, they don't have lethargy, but it's because it's just below this baseline. Once they move into symptoms, they're like, I kind of got a headache today, or I don't feel like I got as much energy, or I don't know why, but I feel like I don't like smelling perfumes anymore. It's because they're past the threshold now. And that means they've already got all of this built up in their system. But the thing is that when somebody has a system that's functioning like a strong constitution, it's cycling that stuff through so well that it never builds up to symptoms. And that's why I like, Beth, seriously, we've got to not put perfume on to go out. Oh my God, it's Beth again. Like that's not, you're probably not hanging out with people like that anymore, but you probably started because as we grow out of that sort of stuff, we have to separate from that. Yeah, we have to
Yeah. You should see one of the last dinners we went to. I sat beside someone. They went like, "Oh no, I wore perfume. Do you want to sit over there?" And then I went and just sit over there. And then like, "Oh my God, I wore perfume!" Like, because they all know. And it's fine. I can go into just like a happy place and tolerate, but I definitely feel it. So yeah.
Well, it's part of the journey is learning to not allow a thought form, a group dynamic, or an egregore to influence the being of the individual who is a sensitive soul. But also those sensitivities there's something in the being, it's nothing physical, it's energetic, that binds to that in some way, shape, or form, because naturally it shouldn't actually cause that effect. Is it good for you? No, but it shouldn't cause like a down regulation of the being itself, which means it's binding to something else energetic, which is either something that's attached to you, something you haven't dealt with from your past or your lineage or your programs or whatever, it's there. And so that's why it has the same. That's why people, go 20, 30 years with chronic illness. They don't know why. Like they're going like, those people go, oh yeah, you just take this powder thing that I took. Oh, I cleaned it all up in like, in a day. And you're like, what the? Like, that's not going to do anything. That's, and people are just, and then you get angry because you're like, all these people, and they're all making all this money selling all this shit that doesn't do it. It's like, why does it have an effect on someone who's just like in that category? And in this category, I've done this, I've changed that, I've taken this, I've done that protocol 100 times. I've refined it down to a T. I've changed my diet, my sleep, I changed house, and there's no mold, there's no this. I'm still like this, what the hell? And so they're not looking at that energetic component, because the way the system of the body works like that is that the more sensitive you are, the more you are tapped into that greater thing, where your organs are portals to these other luminaries, where for someone else, it's like They are, but they're not. But for the sensitives, though, like what's the proof's in the pudding, like how you're functioning in the world just means that you haven't managed to, everything's too fragmented. It's all around the being as opposed to being in the body, in the being. And that's a big thing for somebody to undergo. That's like a whole journey for those particular types. Like I'm not to the same degree as Summer or whatever, but I'm like I would get headaches off of everything. I would be sensitive to Wi-Fi route. I could tell if Wi-Fi or Bluetooth was on without even knowing it was on, and then I'd know if it was switched off because of how I would feel as a result. Like I've been there, I know that. I've just gone through enough steps to have become still sensitive enough to have, to be able to receive information and knowledge for things that I haven't studied, but not sensitive enough to be harmed by those sorts of things that were causing me harm at one point.
Interesting. Yeah. And men detox faster and easier than women also. That's a kind of given. And I think that's very evolutionary in a way, or at least, pro survival of the species, so that, because if you had a whole lot of sensitive men around and they couldn't take it, and if they got taken out by a dryer sheet or something, then we'd go down really fast.
Definitely.
But yeah, women's detox is a totally different thing. Do you know by the way, just quick, one more aside, they have, I think it's basically an autopsy's taken the liver in particular, and it can literally let off fragrance. They can, there's fragrance stored in the liver that can't be processed, and so that's like it's a real thing. In case anyone didn't.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's why it's in everything. That's why it's I think that's an interesting topic too, because there is a definite depopulation agenda through just the most insidious little things that are in everything, such as fragrances. But to think again, just to think that we're not we're built in the image of something that's like less than some fragrance made in a Chinese factory is kind of like, that doesn't add up to me. So is it like, that's not to discount that is factual, but it's like, what paradigm are we living in, and what are we willing to grow beyond? What are we willing to access, and what are we willing to do to access that, to mean that is not something that is just forever in the liver, for example? Because the liver, energetically holds on to so much. So what's being held on, because we definitely get a learned helplessness. So somebody who's just ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is really painful. So they can be around fragrances all the time. It might not affect them, but that's because their potentiality in the world, they don't know. They're not tapped into something higher to realize what's being taken away from. So they just go, I can wake up, I can do a poo, I can go to work, I can eat dinner, I can watch Netflix, I can go to bed, I can wake up and do that again. So to them, there's nothing wrong, but that's because they're not tapped into, they don't have the potential for something bigger and more, and tapped into something else. They won't feel when the moon's at a certain phase. They won't feel when the luminaries are in a certain phase. And that's their life. So we're not meant to compare against those. So just because they're functioning okay in life, it doesn't mean that won't build up in their liver, and that liver will off-gas once they're gone. That doesn't mean that that's the case. So what they don't have the potential for, though, is their whole other side. That's where people who are sensitive have more of that potential, but only because they have the ability to, the expression that life doesn't give you anything you're not capable of handling. So even if it's like, how am I going to do this? Or I can't believe this is happening. It's too hard. I don't know if I can, that's every religious and spiritual text ever. It was always said, don't fear, always have faith. So it's a test to see if you can overcome that. And when you do, you access something more and greater. So when we're talking about the liver, for example, there's so many energetics that go into the liver, and it's a storehouse of anger. It's a storehouse of, it's how we process things and turn things over. So that's not just food, that's thoughts, it's feelings, so many things. So if we have control over that, if we're not doing that, yes, we will store and accumulate things that are forever, whatever, because they won't go, because we're not letting it go. But if we actually are willing enough to go, and which is very, it's a lot more work than doing a lot of push-ups or doing a lot of fasting, whatever, in the external world. If we're willing to do that, the liver will not hold on to the same sort of stuff. It can be let go of, it can be alchemized into something else. Like there's so many different things that can, so it's just, again, it's do we want to choose to do that? Because we always have the choice. That's the whole essence of offers and agreements, is it always comes down to a choice. And what are we going to choose? That's the big question.
Exactly. Well, let's see. I'd like to just go to the chat a little bit. Say hello to Michelle. Nice to have you here. Emil said the more sensitive one is, makes them more easily physically harmed. He's asking.
Can do, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what I've noticed anyway.
Yeah, like I said, I shouldn't broadcast it, but they could take me out with a dryer sheet, right? You don't need any more technology than that. Safe 1995 multiple chemical sensitivity movie. Interesting. Usually when it goes public in a movie, there's some kind of agenda going on. You might have to look at it.
Disclosure.
Right, exactly.
Disclosure.
That's what I mean. Yeah, or that's what. Yeah, you got it. Never assume high-priced hotels are cleaner. I know. It's crazy. The last hotel we stayed at, I called and I said, "Is it possible to get a non-scented room?" They said, "Yes, we'll give that a try." So then the room smelled like poop, and it was like, "Yeah, that's right. There's no fragrance in here. That you did good on that." But somehow, anyway, who cares?
Well, see, that's interesting though, because let's just look at that quickly. We did a lot of traveling, and we had a lot of experience with places where, like, like imagine if there was, and it's always like, I don't want to do it. Imagine someone else did it. Imagine if there was like a subset of Airbnb or whatever that is just for people that look for, non-Teflon kitchenware, linen that's fresh and not washed in fragrances and whatever. Like such simple things to bring to elevate the quality of a place that could be really, really simple that people would really, really value. That's a great business model for somebody who has the aptitude and the willingness to actually create that as an app, as like an add-on or like a star or a tick or something. And it's like, if you get these ones, they have that. Like there's money to be made for that. That's what drives people. Like, is this going to serve me? It would. It absolutely would. So it's like, it's right there for the taking. So it's like, we can complain all we like about expensive hotels or whatever having, more chemicals than others, but it's kind of like, it's the more expensive stuff from what I've seen for people who really like, they'll do whatever. They go really clean stuff, and they're going to places that don't have chemicals in them and all that too. So it's there. We just have to access that again.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I might have to do that. My God. And Ron said, I don't believe in cancer. It doesn't exist in my world. And that's good. So I have a recent story of I had a thing on my finger and it would grow. And I just cut it off and then it'd grow again. And have you heard of Black Salve, Cansema? Amazon Black Salve. So I put a drop on 3 days in a row. And then my hand blew up in inflammation, like really severe, lost use of my right hand entirely. And wow. it had a what's called a positive reaction, meaning that the medicine found what is considered to be skin cancer. I had no belief in this whatsoever. Zero. Right. I literally never had the thought that this might be cancer. Maybe that's naive. I just didn't think of it. That's just like, it's just an annoying little thing. And then, it's been months and months and months. And the medicine did work. It's left me a little deformed, but it's okay. It's just a finger. Got function of my hand back. That's the most important thing. But so cancer didn't care that I didn't believe in it is my point, right? It's like the law doesn't care if you don't believe in it.
Yeah, ignorance is no excuse to the law. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So sorry to be.
It's not about believing in it or not, but it is created from something internally. So when we have these unresolved conflicts within the body, it's like an electrical anomaly. Then that's what can produce tumors and growths and cancers and so on and so forth. So it's like everyone goes in the sun. So how can the sun cause skin cancer? It can be what do you call it? The thing that helps in a process, or it can activate a process. It can be part of the process, but it's not the originating thing. It's what's already in the body. It's either toxicity that's built up just below the subdermal layers. But then why is that there? And what thoughts and feelings have caused the choices and the lifestyle factors and the places, like Gardner, I learned of him, frequency is location. So like what's caused that? I still haven't found a physical cause of, actually my friend Paul Lindertz, his whole work's based around that too. There's I haven't seen a physical cause. I've seen physical cause. What do you call it? Causation and what? My mind's casting a blank. I hate all the scientific stuff. I tried to unlearn it all. Correlation and causation. Okay. So right. The correlation is there, but that's not necessarily the causation.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Let's see if there was a couple of questions before we go on. Let me know if you had a time stop, by the way, if you were, because
it's fine.
Got to ask you. Yeah, okay. Sounds good. So there's a question here, Tom. Is this content regarding parents' influence on children inside your course offerings?
Not directly. I mean, it's there. It's everything works the same way. So the way I teach the concepts of natural law is that it's like this realm is governed by natural. It's not like somebody's laws. It's just the way the world, the realm works, the way it's governed, and then that makes its way into the way we express into the world. It's the way we meet challenges or meet people or meet situations, all working through offers and agreements and or contracts when there's consideration and the choices that are there. So yeah, it does, but not directly. I don't teach directly like the parent should do this with a child, but what's in there, the lessons, they all relate directly to that. In future, I'll be doing ones more based on health and what have you, and the principles of natural law and how they pertain to health and dynamics in relationships.
Nice. Very good. Stella was talking about the sun and our personal relationship with it. Doesn't matter where we are, each one of us feels the sun shining on us in a different given moment. Yep, I get that. Hello, Quietly Content Bear. Nice to see you. Let's see. There was one question. I want to just go right back rather than take too much time here. Paul asked, could you ask Tom what he thinks of the Australian First movement? And is it a force for positive change there? I don't know if this is too big a tangent to go on, but you can let me know.
Can you still see me on screen?
Yes, I can still see you.
Oh, cool. It's because I changed browser. I'm just having a look at what it even is. Extremist political movement founded in Sydney, advocated for isolationism and collaboratism. I don't know if it's got to do with... Okay, so there seems to be... it's a far-right political movement that was active in 1941 and 1942. It seems to be there's a lot coming forward now where people are getting quite nationalist, and it's in response to the decline of the country, which is kind of like makes a lot of sense. And then the flooding of immigrants and things, which is happening in many Western countries. UK is obviously people are seeing a lot of that. It's happening in Australia a lot as well. So there's a lot of kind of nationalist or white nationalist groups that are popping up. And this is really interesting because it's like with anything, I can look at any topic or any speaker or any whatever, and I'm not really interested in the person so much. Like, it's not about the person is bad or whatever. It's just like, what's the message and how do we disseminate the message? And the reason that certain people gain a lot of traction, and sometimes these groups gain a lot of traction, or like public figures like Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan, they form a lot, they get a lot of attention and momentum, is because inherently there's always something in their message that's inherently going to meet the individual where they're at, that makes a lot of sense and rings more true than the current paradigm that they're experiencing. Whether it's true or not, it's just more true than the current paradigm that they're experiencing, which is how these movements get a lot of momentum. As far as whether I think it's a force of positive change, I don't believe any external force is a force for positive change. I think it's all an illusion. And even if it does kind of show to have a quote unquote positive change, it'll be like just sporadic and short-lived at best. And then what's it leaving way for as a result of its die-off, which is never usually positive. It's usually like, seems like a step forward to take 2 steps back. So in any of these movements, I don't know, I don't have firsthand knowledge of this one, but I'll just say in all of the ones that I've observed, which is many, none of them have been what I would say is worth getting behind as a belief system, as a movement, or anything like that, because all of it just takes you away from who you really are. All of it will make you feel like you're progressing in something, yet at the same time, you're taking 2 steps back. To feel like you're taking a step forward, why not just do the real thing? So it kind of means eschewing things like that. It's not that they're all bad. It doesn't mean that something for a week of concerted effort won't make some good. but I would never get behind and outsource to that degree to push something especially of a political nature. I just haven't seen that work out. But having said that, I don't have firsthand knowledge of this one, so I can't say for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate it. Let's see. This I would love to talk about a little bit. When you talked about people are programmable, and so Emil is questioning: is it how did you say it?
Yeah,
influenceable or programmable, and is there even a difference?
Yeah, I think there's a difference. I think influence steers somebody towards a program. I think programs a deeper level of operating. Influence is just like a little bit of a turning of the attention, or a turning of like how we might feel about something before it becomes I think influence precedes program. I can see the argument for them being the same, and in some circumstances or contexts, I would agree. I just think that from a broader perspective, I think influence precedes programs.
Nice. I like the word impressionable. And was it somebody Carey in the Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation? Just looking towards my bookcase
George
there.
Carey.
George, thank you. Yeah, and he talked about the cerebellum and the cerebrum, and the root of that word ceri being seed, meaning wax-like substance that is highly impressionable, the way that wax is. And you know how sometimes I'll play with this where you say, have to send a code to your phone to get into your app is just very common these days. And then so I'll look at it once and I will repeat, I'll repeat it, the numbers to myself, and then I'll look away and then I'll listen for what I just repeated. And it's literally in there. It made an impression between looking at it and then saying the numbers to myself. There is an imprint. Now, ask me 20 minutes later if I could repeat that number. Nope. But it's right there. It's made an impression. So that's a kind of fun example just of that nature that we are so impressionable. Is there anything more you want to say about that?
No, I totally agree. We're definitely very impressionable, especially that's the nature of a baby. It's all impression. And it does, impressions and imprints are very important, because this is what in the world of programming MK Ultra and things of that nature, it's all about imprints and programs. And because it literally does that, like you can even imprint an image of something in somebody's mind and they can express that image, for example. So yeah, it's a big thing. But again, like I know people get fascinated with it and then they just stay there and they do a whole life's work just on that. And I'm like, but why wouldn't you want to go further into how you can be the thing that actually flips that or alchemizes that and becomes like, uses that or turns it into something else or becomes impermeable to that? Because that's the nature of what we were talking about earlier. It's super fascinating. And I think that's also a trap, because it becomes very, it really titillates the mind, and that's usually always a bit of a trap. So coming back into being, I think, really helps a lot. Like it's fine that that's the case, but it doesn't have to be as well. Like it is an offer, but that's also a sliding scale, because it's an offer. But when you're not very deep into yourself when you're standing, it's like it might be an offer, but it's definitely going to imprint you. So it's like there's a sliding scale to that. So the deeper you get to know yourself, the less that has the ability to imprint, unless you actually consciously let that in. So that's just to qualify that too, because there's always the examples of like, but that didn't work for me, or that definitely harms me, or that whatever. And it's like, well, that's why.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I used to have a teacher that would say, when it rains, get wet. Please get wet. Right. And so that idea that you could, and this ties back into the sensitivity too, that you could say, go through a horrific experience and have no impressions or the resulting programming. But I think it's the other way around, personally, in my experience, that the more inner work you do, the more free will you earn, the more impressionable you become. Now, not with a lack of discernment that you couldn't choose. And, like I saw an image, I let myself watch a movie every so often. I like indulge in that because I haven't seen many over my lifetime. And some of these horrific images, it's exactly when I turn it off, but I'll spend the next 24, 48 hours detoxing the image. right? Like I have to actively do that in order to not have it be a, loss of energy or kind of cause of suffering for me, even to just see this fictitious image. So, yeah.
But impressionable is not bad either, because you want to be impressionable, because when somebody leaves a good impression, you want that to be the case. But also you can be impressionable. You can walk into a room and leave a good impression on an audience, for example. So it's just nothing like inherently like, oh, that's a shit thing that we're impressionable.
No.
It's definitely a good thing.
It's by design, right? That's we wouldn't be who we are without that, and probably not be able to have relationships with each other if we couldn't make an impression. So yeah, boundaries are a good one. Absolutely. I'm sure I missed a bunch of but I want to go back to my notes selfishly, just in case we still have a few time for a few questions left. One of the things that I've noticed is that when it comes to free will being, if not the same thing as freedom, right? People get on a megaphone and yell freedom, and you can see very quickly who doesn't have a hot clue what that even is, even though they're yelling it like a mantra, or it's become a kind of narrative in our whatever the freedom movement is. Nobody can even, a lot of disillusionment around that. And I've discovered that people are actually terrified by real freedom, right? Not freedom from tyranny, not freedom from disease, not freedom from even programming, but the real deal. And so how do you help people over that precipice? Like, is there any way to reframe, or is that just naive thinking that somehow you can change their thinking and give them a different relationship to freedom?
Do you mean the types that are at the rallies and shouting for freedom, and they know that there's something wrong with society, but they just are blaming it on like the government and stuff? Is that what you mean? Or?
Yes, because like they're willing to show up at the rally and chant, but when it comes to taking responsibility for themselves, earning their right to choose, learning, being educated, they don't want to do that, right? So they're happy to rail against the machine and chant about freedom, but when real freedom knocks on their door and says, "Oh, well, you might need a garden, or you might need a community to live with, or you might, not that the freedom doesn't depend on those things. It doesn't depend on literally anything, because you could be in a jail and be free. I know that for a fact. But the terror, and I hear this all the time in my work, because that's the whole purpose of the deprogramming work, is to experience freedom. That's not a state. That's not a frequency. It is beyond that. It's the source of that. If there's anything that you could say about it, that's all I could say. And they're literally.
No, I mean, I just agree with what you're saying.
Okay. Like it's the caged bird, right? That you try to take it out and it freaks out, like, oh my goodness, I'm dying. And how can you assist in that?
I don't. So I guess to answer your question, I mean, I think people have to come to that kind of realization on their own. And then if they ask for tools to be able to do that, that's where I help people with tools to do that. But as far as trying to convince people or tell them they're wrong, or that's just not a thing. I think that there's an old expression that the greatest revenge that you can have on like people who are, wish bad for you or whatever, is just to not be like them. And so likewise, if you're just really strongly on your own path, and then that's enough for people to just go like, I'm doing all this rah stuff, but then why is that guy living I like the life that he's living kind of thing, and it naturally draws them towards that, then I think that's the best you can do to kind of change somebody's mind. But I just, I've tried in the past, like, 10, 20 years ago, that was my thing, was trying to convince people. But I just never had any success with that. Like, people can definitely they just become like weirdly interested in it instead of being interested in that, but they never change any, and it just doesn't go very far. So I just don't think that anything other than really living it yourself and being that yourself is going to be fruitful for trying to quote unquote help people that are stuck in that paradigm. They just have to see that there's something different, because if they're doing that, they're just They want something different. They're doing what they think they can do. So this to them is action that's affirmative in the right direction. But it's only because they don't have any other tools. They don't know any other way. So it's not like they're idiots or they're wrong or they're bad or whatever. It's just that they just don't know any better. So if they can see something that's better, or a gentle offering of just a question. So I always find questions work well. It's like, hey, how are you going with that? Hey, have you considered this? Have you looked for any other ways? Are you aware of such and such? And if they show an interest, then I'll help. If they're not interested, it's just not it's just not for me to enter into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And would you say that would be an affront on their free will to try to, give them a different perspective or take their fear away?
It would feel like it. I don't think it's an affront on it, because technically you'd be offering them a greater breadth of choice to exercise free will. But in the isolated context of their limited amount of choices, which are programmed, then that's kind of taken away from their ability to indulge in that paradigm until they realize that paradigm has entropy, and they're just like, there's got to be more than that, and then they'll go looking for, it's kind of like when I gave the example earlier about the colored pens and the choices, and thinking that's like, well, that's what you're told exists. Unless you're willing to look beyond what you're told into what's actually out there, so that it's not, then you're going to be very limited in the choices that you have in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how we raise children. I learned that skill. No one had to teach it to me, that if I want my son to do one of two things, I'm going to make it seem like there's only two options. You want to do this thing that I want you to do, or you want to do this thing that I want you to do. And that lasted about 5 minutes. Yeah, he got hit.
Well, it's also how sales works, because sales works on like alternate closes. It's like, would you prefer the red or the blue? If you say, do you want a pen? Someone can say yes or no, and no is not good in sales. If you say, would you prefer the red or the blue? You're like, yeah, I guess the blue. You might not have even really wanted a pen, but you would prefer blue than red. So now you're making a choice, and the sales are occurring. It's kind of a really good analogy for the way that the world, as in while people are stuck in that model, works, is that you're going between a selection of predetermined choices, of which there are a multitude, infinite beyond that. You just have to access it. You have to grow out of being able to be sold, essentially, where you have to decide, do I actually really want or need a pen in the first place? Is there another way to go about what I'm trying to achieve? Is there, and you start having divergent thinking, and you start to move away from those paradigms, and that's where you start accessing a lot more of choice and free will and so on and so forth. And there's so many analogies for that. The sales is a great actual analogy for so many things in life, the way people are programmed to respond. It's even what police and governments do, it's sales.
Right. They must be trained in those exact methods, don't you think?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's you communicate in a way that only leaves room for a predetermined set of outcomes. That's why one of the best ways to quote unquote break the matrix, or whatever you want to call that, break a program, is to do something that's unexpected. And I've got a lesson coming up in my course on that. It's when you see people go into a courtroom. There's this dude that goes into a political something rather in the States, and just starts breakdancing, and everyone's kind of like, what are you doing? And he like ends up on the ground doing like a spin around on his back, like holding his legs up and that. And what it does is it breaks the frame, or it breaks the paradigm. It's like, that's not supposed to happen. And before I even knew how to handle commerce, like the way I would interact with police or border or whatever, I would just naturally know to fall into a different character that broke the paradigm. And when they don't have the same, I do this is what happens in result, they're either going to do this, or this, and I'm doing that, they don't know how to respond to it. It discombobulates their like authoritarian mind, and all of a sudden they don't have interest in me anymore when they were previously going to try and give me a ticket. That fascinated me. I learned that like in 2008. That was like way early on. I started to play characters and do weird things that like interrupted the script, the narrative. It just interrupted it. It's like a pattern interrupt, and it really was effective. And me not being bothered by the judicial system, and I was like, wow, that's fascinating. And then I realized how that actually played out more insofar as the way the control mechanism of the world works That's another whole topic there.
Yeah, that's the most fun I have is a pattern interrupt. Because I see the patterns really well. I work in a field where people literally bring their patterns that they're unaware of. And so when you see them and somebody's very deep into them, they're maybe not, as easily accepting responsibility for what's happening in their life. There's a number of tools, but you often don't know what they are. I also have the memory of getting into one of our markets here when I didn't intend to go. I decided, okay, I'm not gonna be a troublemaker. I'm just gonna sit in the car and wait. But I saw my elderly friend limping to the door. I'm like, darn it, I'm gonna help her in there. I don't care. I'm just gonna go do that. And the guy confronts me and like, you need a mask. And then I just said, I'm helping this woman. And you could see the pattern shattered for him. He went blank and we walked by. And it was just that exact moment. Now, you can't make that into a script. It doesn't work like that, but it was, I just pulled something. I'm helping this woman. And so it was.
You just nailed it. You had spontaneity and creativity in the moment. That's outside of the paradigm of the script or the pattern or the narrative. And you nailed it, but that's why you can't learn scripts, because if you learn a script and bring it into it's the same thing. Nothing breaks it. A script won't break it. It can help you to access something in you. Scripts aren't all bad, but they're not to be relied upon because it's not you. It's not something that's innately coming through you, but the script can help you unlock that. So that's why I don't say like never learn different wording. It's powerful, but it's only to access something deeper in you.
Exactly. What I notice is that the script works for a time. And I think this is related to our impressionable nature, our programmable nature, that there's certain instructions. You might have found this with certain modalities or techniques or tools that it works right away. I used to be able to let go of hiccups, which you don't think you could let go of. And I would use one word. I would say unsuppress. And then my body would follow that instruction. I would unsuppress. The hiccup would end immediately. Like I'm going, wow, fancy that. Don't have to suffer with hiccups. But there came a time where that didn't work anymore. Why? Because my system predicted it. It was no longer a pattern interrupt. And so I had to use other approaches.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's good. This is fun for me. I like this. What would you consider to be the law? Maybe we talked about this, the law of pain. I've heard you talk about that.
So it's inevitable. There's a quote that says pain's inevitable, suffering is optional, because we're going to go through various forms of pain in life no matter what. I think it always requires growth. That's why like when we're children, we go through growing pains. I just think it's a natural part of the way life works until we can. Because the thing about every law, which is like a natural law, cause and effect, is that we can actually transcend them. But that's like reserved for when you actually start to achieve mastery in different levels of life. So until then, though, I think that pain is just a natural part of life. And it doesn't have to mean that you have like physical pain and you're in crippling pain. The example that I think that was in a post, the example I gave is like, if you imagine somebody that's been smoking for like 40 years and they're in all sorts of physical disrepair, like they're really not enjoying life. It's not necessarily because of the smoking, it's because of who they are, why they're smoking, how they're doing it, and everything else, right? So it's either going to be really painful for someone in that position to give up because they're addicted, they rely on it. It's painful to have to give up and go through that and go through cold turkey or whatever. But continuing with their habits is also going to be painful because it's like they're already in pain and continue. So they're going to be faced with the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. So, but the difference is one's going to lead to something fruitful and the one's going to lead to a demise. Either way, they're going to go through pain. So pain doesn't have to be bad and suffering is optional. Pain can actually be very, very fruitful and very joyful to go through. Even something like discipline, which is painful for people who don't innately have a lot of drive or discipline, that they have to like almost force themselves to do things that are good for them. Inherently, that feels good. Because once they achieve it and they realize that they were better off after doing something that required discipline to do, they have satisfaction and self-worth and like just a sense of being fed in a way that like those 15 Oreos they were going to eat couldn't have given them. So pain doesn't have to be bad. It's when we can embrace it as a teacher. Once we've met a particular pain teacher, we rarely have to meet that particular pain teacher again. So that can include things that were inflicting physical pain on us as well. We don't need to meet that teacher again.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I mean, pain is pain when you get to it, but you're saying exactly the same thing. I just use these words that there's the pain with purpose, and then there's the purposeless pain, right?
Yeah.
Of staying and eating the Oreos and not gaining discipline and not growing, avoiding growing. People will put all their might into avoidance of growing. And there's so much pain in it. And if they cross the threshold to their side, they're in for a lot of pain too, but it's different. It's like actually feeding the soul rather than starving it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's exactly. It's just a different paradigm. So yeah, once you learn to not fear pain and try to avoid pain, you experience less of it. It's weird. And I think it's that biggest fear most people have is that fear of death. Once you can get through that, the fear of dying, then you're truly living. Like in my opinion, if you're afraid of death, you're not really alive already. So it's one of those paradoxes. But same with pain. Like once you stop fearing it, you don't want to resist that anymore. It's like life becomes a lot more freeing.
Yeah, amen to that. There's a lot of times I'll say that exactly about the primary fear being of dying, and most people go, "Oh, I have no fear of dying whatsoever. I fear suffering," is almost always the follow up, but it's so deeply unconscious. People are not aware of it. They don't want to touch it. I had a lovely client, beautiful. I love her, and she spent 40 minutes trying not to feel that, and then finally she got brave and she went into it. It's like, whoa. Right? There was just a whole and a massive shift on the other side that was waiting for her. So like God doesn't set up fruitless pain is what I notice. That there's always a gift to have the courage to go through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's when life deals it to us. The difference is though that we can create that for ourselves when we are definitely being the cause of when we're unwilling to resolve things or we're unwilling to look at what it is that we're creating. I think, like I think it'd be pretty obvious to people the difference between when life deals us something and then the pain that we're creating through our own lack of willingness to engage in our own, inner authority and self-governance and what have you. We can just cause it all for ourselves.
Right. Could we talk about the king archetype?
Yeah.
Since that's part of your whole beautiful new brand, the Humble Kingdom. And how do you see that king? What's the nature of that for you?
So, I mean, I'm aware of the actual archetypes, the way that they describe the different stages. So what I'll add that I guess is directly relevant to what it is that I'm helping to share is that when I'm talking about kingdoms, it's what's within us. So it's not necessarily an archetype, like going from a child archetype to like maybe like the wizard or the king but it's not really about that. It's just the kingdom that's within. It's very old. It's not mine either. Like the Bible talks about the kingdom is within. Many of the other spiritual texts from all different cultures talk about the inner kingdom. And it's that way to access it. And what is it and why is it? So like, why is it important? Kingdoms hold wealth, kingdoms hold security and safety, kingdoms hold purpose, kingdoms hold value and love and reason and servitude to something higher. So when we can access that, then we stop looking and outsourcing so much for that to be outside and following illusory forms of that. So you got your fiction and your substance, or your public and your private. So the kingdom is like the private. It has substance and it's already given to us. But similar to free will, like most people just don't access it. They have to earn it. You have to earn your way to the kingdom. You have to give up and sacrifice things. You have to be willing to be humble enough to receive it. It's not like, because the inversion of it is the king who's like sticks a crown on his head and he's a ruler and whatever I say people will do, and I'll just receive a lot of taxes and give myself a lot of wealth. And I want like heaps of servants to do everything for me. I don't want to do anything myself. I'm the king. That's kind of like the hyper masculine, women do this for me and like I have 15 Ferraris and I'm the king. Like people do what I say. if I walk into the club, everyone looks to me and respects me. That's like the inversion of a kingdom, of a true kingdom. So that's why I call it that, because I'm like, after everything I've gone through and learned over the years, I just keep seeing so much and what I was entrapped in as well was the illusions and the programs, the egregores, the spells, everything that's designed to take us out of ourselves and out of who we really are. And when we can contain that and come back in, then we can get access to that kingdom. But again, we have to earn it, and we have to be willing to be humble enough to get there. But the weird thing is that also leads to, people chase the external wealth, but that leads to true wealth. It was just way more satisfying, but it's there, but we just have to be willing to access that. So yeah, that if I was just going to answer, so that was just the preamble, but to answer that question, Beth, for me, like if I'm going to talk about that in the context that I'm using it, it's to occupy a standing as a king. And the standing as a king is not as a ruler, it's almost as a servant, but it's not as like, you never give your power away. You never allow people to cross boundaries. There's a power and a humility that go hand in hand, and it's like they don't exist without the other. That's the archetype. If you were going to say an archetype, that's the one that I'm working towards creating teachings around. Yeah, but I guess because like you talk about the archetypes and the king archetype in the traditional sense. Is there any way that you think that they go together?
I'm right on board with your definition. I do talk about shadows and gifts. The shadows being, when it's an energy that you're not aware of, your tendency might be to not be the humble king, but to try to power over and dominate others, to get addicted to power, to feel like there's never enough. It doesn't matter how much you get. You have to always be a workaholic and keep amassing more wealth. And no, I'm right. I'm totally down with your view. That's exactly like the servant king is another way to say this humble kingdom, or maybe different. Like, because the kingdom is not the king.
Kingdom's a place. So dom's kind of like the prefix for domicile, and domicile is where you are, where you live, but kind of more so where you are in the world, not of the world, like where you are, not where you live. And so that's the kingdom. The kingdom is a place. The kingdom's a place that we all have access to, and we all have a different kingdom within. So it takes away then also, knowing that can also take away power structures where people give all of their stuff to like the Queen of England in their kingdom. It's like that's the fictitious version of a kingdom. And when you realize you have your own, you're less likely to outsource and give power. Like if I'm subservient to that, in return, I'll get this. I'll get, sustenance or safety or security or whatever. Or I'll have value. I'll have a purpose and a role to play in this world. And it's like, if you revert that to knowing that that's already there, then you're less likely to give your power away to illusions and people doing smoke and mirrors to try to take away your energy, which actually comes from your kingdom. It's like the place that has that inherent riches and wealth and everything is taken when we give it away and outsource like that. So it's about containing that and being able to use that for us, because that's who it's for. It's for us. It's not to give out. It's like we can share the wealth, so to speak, in a positive way, but we're not to give it away, for it to be quote unquote taxed from us. But that's our giving, as opposed to an outright taking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really big difference. Have you noticed that people love to give, but they don't like to be asked?
Very much.
Yeah.
Same as sales, actually. People love to buy. They don't like to be sold.
Right. Yeah. And back to free will, right? Because that you start to encroach on that free will.
Definitely.
Yeah. Do you think maybe, I think I've already promised one question, but I still have one in addition, that can you take someone's free will away?
Yeah, I think so. But when I say that, to qualify it, it's not that you can take it away, but you can influence them so heavily that they'll give it away. And the way that would work is that you can traumatize somebody into giving it away, essentially. But because I can see two people in the same scenario, same amount of trauma, same amount of like everything put onto them, one gives in and gives it away, and the other, they're just kind of like, well, what are you doing? Like, that's just annoying. Go away. You know, one person gave it and the other person didn't, which is why I just don't think you can take it from someone. Even with things like vaccines, even with things like, you know, forced just, you know, influence and trauma on people, I still think you have to give it, but the intent is to take it. So that's kind of like to the subtleties of that question. The intent is to take it, absolutely. But I still think you have to give it.
Right, right. Some people would say that's the ultimate highest possible sin that there is to threaten somebody's free will, to make it so hard for them to continue on.
Yeah, it's imposing yourself upon somebody and trying to break their will, for sure. Like, that's it's definitely a no-no to do.
Right, right. Yeah, I think if there's a definition of satanic, that might be there. Not that I need one these days at all. And yeah, so do you want to tell people how to take advantage of your courses and teachings that you have to offer, and anything else that you have going?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. So we just have the humblekingdom.com at the moment. That's our site. And we have a course, The Beginner's Guide to Natural Law. So that goes through all of what you would need to know as a beginner to start figuring this out. The way I describe it is that the whole realm that we're in is governed by natural law. And then you can disseminate that down into different parts, individual parts of your life. And they all work on the same principles, whether you're dealing with your loved ones, if you're dealing with the public system, if you're dealing with laws of cause and effect in the world, they're all governed by natural laws. So when you can get the basics down, you start to become, it's not like it's happening to you, you're a part of it. So you're actually meeting life. And when you understand like the rules of that game, you can start implementing that in a way that helps you, rather than feeling like life or the world or society is like trying to take from you or oppressing you or anything of that nature. So for me, what it does in simple terms is it levels the playing field through practical things you can do, and then the inner work as well. So it's just the one course, and it's self-learning. You don't have to enroll at a particular time. You just, as soon as you take the course, you have access to the lessons. It's currently priced in a beta stage as well. The price will go up once it's finished. And before the end of the year, there'll be 8 full-length lectures added, which are going to tie what's already in the course together. And I'm going to do a bonus lesson on digital ID as well, because it's just really hot on people's minds. And by breaking down that lesson, it's going to just highlight all of the other lessons in natural law as well. So that'll be there by the end of the year. But whenever you join, everything that gets added to and improved in the course from when you join, you never pay more for that. It's always just whenever you join, you get access to the course and additions and improvements for the lifetime which you have the course for life. So that's the current offering. And then my socials are tombarnett.tv on Instagram and Telegram, and The Humble Kingdom on YouTube. And I don't know what my Facebook is, Tom Barnett or The Humble Kingdom, one of the two. Facebook's not the best.
I thought if I had them here, I'd put them up. I'm sorry, I don't. But it's been fun. I totally enjoyed this conversation. I knew it was going to be great. I totally appreciate it a lot. So good. Thank you, everyone, for chiming in the chat. I know I've missed comments, but I apologize. I can only do 2 or 5 things at one time.
You need someone else doing your production and that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, it's kind of not in my wheelhouse at the moment, but yeah, we didn't even scratch the surface of digital ID. So I do recommend going and getting that course, since it's going to be updated. This is part of that. You know, when people learn over time, that's actually, I appreciate that kind of a format, that you can update it and that people can get access to the changes that take place. I often do my work. I had to close out some older courses because I'm just not, I can't go and fix what's there. Enough has changed that I need it to be totally updated based on new knowledge. And so that's a wonderful framework to run.
Yeah, I just like the idea of doing that because I just went through too much experience of seeing where people won't up. Like, it's not that, we're always learning and growing, but also you can always improve something as well. So I like the idea of, for example, your son does music and that, like, for example, I like it with my my music production software. Like you buy it and you buy it once, but every time they update it and then add new features, it's all included because you've already bought it. I really like that model. So that's why I wanted to do my course the same sort of way, where updates and improvements are just, you never have to
rebuy a course or whatever. It's just you bought it, you invested in it, and then that's how it works. It's just improvements in that as it goes.
Yeah, yeah, and then you can polish your stone and do it a long lifetime with people. So, speaking of my son, I did want to shout out to him that Liam Martins, I can say his name. He's an adult now, and he's does go by Psycho on SAIKO with some weird things in there. But there is a link below in the show notes if you'd like to go and sub to him. As that's the way I thank him for providing the music. He's playing the two pieces at the intro and the extra. So that's fun for me as a mama. He definitely superseded me by far as a musician. Even his dad, he plays circles around his dad now, and his dad is like a lifetime professional musician. So it's kind of fun. Yeah. Isn't it great when they make better on what they were given? It's like amazing.
Absolutely,
yeah.
I think it's so cool that his music's for doing your intro and outro. That's awesome. I love that.
Thank you. Thanks. Now he's got a full-time job and a full-time girlfriend, so I have to make very specific plans with him and hold him down to see him. But I wish you well. Has married life been extremely transformative? I end with a very
it's the best. Yeah. It's so funny because 10 years ago I would never have thought that I would do that. So it's great.
Well, a lot of love to Summer. I totally enjoyed meeting her, and we just had a few exchanges, but I could feel her heart was very, very big. So.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Pass it on.
Okay. You're welcome. Alrighty, everyone. So I'm going to set up this little outro by my son, Psycho, Liam Martins. And thank you very much, Tom. It's been an absolutely wonderful interview.
Thanks.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. Okay. You're very welcome. Bye for now. Oh, quickly to let you know, tomorrow we are coming at 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, November 6th for Mike Wilkerson's Stellium 7. And Friday, I have a brand new show called Beth of Fresh Air. And that was a new beginning for me that I've really enjoyed. I'm going to talk all about conveyance this weekend. I'm not talking about traveling in a car, but how we convey, how we communicate, what we get across, what can work, what can fail, and what we're actually ultimately at the end of the day trying to convey. So if you're not on my email list already, I can invite you to do a King Hero archetype quiz, and in 10 minutes you find out your King Hero archetype, where you are. You were talking about location is very important, like to actually find yourself in the context. And then I let people know every time that there's a live stream, so you'll have all of those details. And I think that's all for now. So have a beautiful rest of your day ahead of you. Now it's evening. I've been looking at the full moon the whole entire time in my window. It's really nice.
Nice.
Yeah. So
nice to hang out with you. Thanks, people, for joining too.
Likewise. Okay. Bye for now.
See ya.